So my second question for the group here is about sort of new technologies or existing technologies that look exciting, like they're developing all the time. Oscar, you're going to do a session at the conference on searching by images.
Yes,
probably the most interesting thing on my radar at the moment would be Google Glass.
Yeah, you're right.
How do you see that?
I see image search is rapidly developing now and turning into something that I'd like to call visual sourcing or visual talent sourcing. The main drivers for that are two technologies really, facial recognition and the development of Google Glass or Google Glass devices, because now it's Google Glass and there probably will be more similar devices in the future. I feel that visual sourcing is probably the game-changing talent sourcing technique that we will encounter in the next few years. Because if you look at image search now, then an image search technique, the way we use that is we try to find people through the images, the still pictures that they have floating around on the internet. So that is profile pictures, avatars, event pictures, stuff like that. And I think, and I foresee that with facial recognition and Google Glass, that recruiters in the future will be able to recognize talent on the go. If they wear a device like that, and if facial recognition is enabled, because that still isn't on the debate because of privacy regulations, more privacy concerns really.
So really, sort of privacy concerns aside, you could be walking around the train station and
exactly,
and if you've got certain keywords set up, if a person across the concourse from you has the skills you want, it could. It could, get an alert
no,
on your...
maybe, yes, no, that's how it goes.
A long certainly happened. I mean, the whole move with the social media stuff has reduced all the people's perception of privacy. And how open people are about information, and everybody knows that if it's out there, you've got precious little privacy anyway.
And that probably is just a matter of time. I know that privacy is a huge concern there, and there's lots of debate around that. And we have had that with social networks as well. We have that with auto tagging in Facebook. They've turned it off for a while, and they're turning it on now. So it's just a matter of time, I think, that Google will allow facial recognition apps to be part of Google Glass. And then our future can become really interesting, I think. So we have been discussing this already for a couple of years, and I always just thought that mobile phones were the device that would lead that sort of transformation. But now with Google Glass, that is going really, really fast.
Ralph, I mean, you working with Ernst & Young, obviously a large corporate company. I mean, what kind of tools are your team finding particularly useful, or are you quite excited about for the future?
Yeah, I mean, tools we're using at the moment are, of course, LinkedIn Recruiter. It seems like it's the easiest to use. It's big. I mean, there's something like 200 million members on LinkedIn at the moment. And what's amazing is most large corporate organizations are actively speaking to their employees, telling them to update their LinkedIn profiles, because not only do they use it for recruitment, but they use it for their sales, their business development, and I think it's just become natural for a manager or anybody who's got any business activity to look up who's visiting on LinkedIn first. So it's become this machine that, although it's part of recruitment, it's actually a greater part of it, or a greater thing rather than just recruitment. I mean, Recruiter specifically, LinkedIn Recruiter, they adjusting it to become more of a database, so you can tag people now, you can make lists, you can share lists with your managers. It's become almost a big argument in terms of why will we buy a database, because LinkedIn Recruiter kind of does most of that stuff in any case. And there's a few extra add-ons that they've started to provide, so analytics, for instance, how well are my ad responses going, how well are my searches going, etc., etc. So from a technical point of view, you really become very focused and very technical just in terms of how you go about things.
Right.
it's definitely changing compared to when I first started using it. I mean, LinkedIn back in 2008 was rubbish. Now it is really good. You know, you really, but I see lots of similarities between LinkedIn Recruiter and the Zing and the Viadeo network. So it's all of them are starting to become very, very similar, and the logarithms that they use and the algorithms is getting so complex and starting to identify a lot of business terms within context. And that's the big problem, is that we've never had context in sourcing. So if you were a finance manager, it depends what context it's in, and that's getting so much better now. So you can actually source a lot better in context, which is really, really important. So that's one trend I've noticed, certainly with technology.
Yeah. The only thing is that with LinkedIn Recruiter, it's very limited to LinkedIn itself. There's no connection with other, social networks. It would be nice to have that more sort of cross functionality with other networks, so that enriches the profiles that you find in LinkedIn Recruiter.
Definitely.
LinkedIn's not that great in terms of connectivity. If you compare it to some of the Google or Twitter, just really, really open networks.
Certainly agree. Yeah. I think the future will be an amalgamation of those 4 or 5 major media sources, and okay, I didn't find this on LinkedIn, find it on Google. If I didn't find it on Google, it's on Twitter. If it's not on Twitter, it's going to be on something else. It's just, I think that's how source is probably going to evolve, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, especially if you limit your searches to, your searches to just LinkedIn. You
limit yourself.
You limit yourself absolutely in finding the right people, because not everyone.
But LinkedIn, everybody uses LinkedIn because it's low hanging fruit. It's the obvious and natural place to go.
Yeah.
It's the fastest way to find.
I'm under time pressure. Okay, here's something.
But then saying that back in 2008, we would say that about a CV database on a job board. That was our low hanging fruit.
What's that?
That you went to.
Maybe you're on the database. Do you remember one of them?
I tell you what was cool the other day. I did a search, and I said, make myself a rule: you will not use LinkedIn. I said, you'll only validate and check the people out, but you're not going to use that as your primary source of data. It was just surprising how much stuff you could find. I literally got to a point where all the people that you can also view as function, they were already on my list, and I was just like.
So basically, if you are a really, really great sourcer, then you should turn off LinkedIn and start doing your job.
I think you could. I think you could get away with it.
Well, the recruitment, the key thing, the recruitment industry uses LinkedIn to find candidates. Candidates never use LinkedIn to find recruiters. Candidates use Twitter to find recruiters. So if you really want to go and find candidates, go and fish where the fish are, which probably isn't LinkedIn.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I spoke to a colleague of mine. His father's looking for work, and he said to me, How do I get people to find me? I said, Twitter. And he's like, I'm 60, I don't know how to use Twitter. I said, okay, in 5 minutes. Okay, that's your result here in Amsterdam, etc., etc. And he's just like, wow. And you're right, totally right. That's how people are going to look for work, through hearsay,
Yeah, I see people asking me, I'm looking for a job, what should I do? They're asking me on Twitter, and I say, have you updated your LinkedIn profile? And they say, oh, I'll go and do that.
Well, that's how the recruiters will find you, so,
But their natural, I want to put myself out there, they put themselves out there on platforms like Twitter. So Shane, you were going to run a session at the event on using search techniques to find clients rather than
Brilliant. That's
finding
exactly
candidates.
what I'm going to do.
So, what tools are you seeing as essential for that?
It's the same tools, just used differently. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, because we're in June now, and it's September, and it'll be whatever. It'll be a different world. So I don't know what tools are going to be there. I mean, the interesting thing about sourcing and the techniques you can use sourcing, everybody thinks of it's candidates, and people start off with LinkedIn, but then you say to yourself, well, if you're an agency recruiter, you can also use it for business development. And you can go out and find all sorts of vacancies out there. Well, why not? You can find whatever you want on the internet. So it's just about taking the same techniques and strategies and applying them to any question that springs to mind. And it is quite interesting whenever you set yourself a challenge to solve a particular problem, that you can go and develop tools or use the tools that are already there to do so.